Hello?
Beata, can I just test that microphone? But
Test 1, 2.
so when you speak though, Beata, you'll come up here, okay?
Okay.
So, dear friends, if you'd like to have a seat, we can start again. Well, welcome back, everyone. As you know, this weekend marks the 70th anniversaries of the U.S. atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And we decided a year and a half ago to organize our annual Peace Vigils protests at Los Alamos for these 70th anniversaries and to hold this national conference between the two. That's why we're here in Santa Fe, in the shadow of the bomb, the shadow of Los Alamos, the birthplace of the bomb. And from a year and a half ago, with our friends at Upaya and the local committee, when we were dreaming this up, we said because we're in New Mexico, number one in military spending, more nuclear, the birthplace of the bomb and so forth, we would have a session about this. And many of us were at Los Alamos on Thursday, and we will go back tomorrow, on Sunday, for our vigil to mark the anniversary of Nagasaki. As you know, business is booming at Los Alamos. So is the nuclear weapons industry. Instead of dismantling our weapons and using them for pro-human needs, as we heard in the last extraordinary session, we're improving them. A few years ago, the U.S. Congress voted and approved over $1 trillion to upgrade the U.S. nuclear industry over the next 30 years. So this panel now is on the topic of nuclear weapons, Los Alamos, and nonviolence, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. You can read their full, amazing biographies in the program, and unfortunately, James Doyle was not able to join us this afternoon. I will introduce them in the order they will speak, and they will each speak for a few minutes as before, and then hopefully have a question. And we'll do that again, and then we're going to end right at 3:30, theoretically, for the coffee break, and at 4 o'clock we have Roshi Joan Halifax, so it's very exciting. So, first, dear friends, we will hear from Jay Coghlan, the Executive Director of New Mexico Nuclear Watch. He's been an advocate for nuclear disarmament and a researcher on nuclear weapons for nearly 30 years. He's led the fight against major new plutonium facilities for nuclear weapons in Los Alamos and elsewhere for 26 years and lives here in Santa Fe. Next, we will hear from Bud Ryan, an anti-nuclear activist, filmmaker, member of Pax Christi, who has helped organize our annual Sackcloth and Ashes Peace Vigils since 2003. His film, The Forgotten Bomb, is a powerful documentary about nuclear weapons from Hiroshima to Los Alamos. We have copies for sale out on the table. I hope you all get them. He lives here in Madrid, New Mexico. Then we will hear from my friends, Marian Naranjo, the founder and director of HOPE, Honor Our Pueblo Existence, a community-based organization located at the Santa Clara Pueblo here in New Mexico at the foot of Los Alamos. Mother of 4, grandmother of 7, she has worked actively for many, many years to address environmental and health issues for her region, which means also nuclear disarmament, and of course the Santa Clara Pueblo, as well as to promote projects that preserve and protect sacred sites here in New Mexico. Then we will hear from my friend Beata Tsosie-Pena, and also an activist from the Santa Clara Pueblo on the staff of Tiwa Women United, a nonprofit organization here in New Mexico where she advocates for justice, a clean environment, and health care for all. She has lived all her life near the nuclear weapons complex at Los Alamos and advocates her Pueblo's vision for peace and a nonviolent world. Finally, we'll hear from our friend, Reverend James Lawson. Again, we'll close the panel with further insights and connections, especially regarding nuclear weapons in light of nonviolence. Dear friends, please join me in welcoming this extraordinary panel.
Okay, John asked me to cover, yeah, see, it's not tall enough for me. John asked me to cover U.S. nuclear weapons programs in 5 minutes, and you know, I thought that was a clear example of the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, because that's pretty much an impossible thing to do. But I have a sneaky way of getting around it, and I encourage Q&A, which I like and all of us like. I want to start with kind of a little bit of a geopolitical note. In May, we had the review conference for the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and I was there for the first week. But the bottom line is that it ended in failure. The immediate cause was because Israel asked the U.S. to block it, to block a conference on having a Middle East nuclear weapons free zone. So there's a heavy historic irony that Israel is one of the 3 countries that haven't signed the treaty, but yet it's the country that essentially sabotaged the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Even as we make all this noise about Iran potentially getting a weapon. So there's a heavy irony here. To bring just a personal item in, just yesterday, along with 3 other guys, I filed a friend of the court brief in a lawsuit that the Republic of Marshall Islands has brought, both in the World Court against the 9 nuclear weapons powers, and then in U.S. court against the U.S. And it's 4 guys. I'm the weak link in the chain. It includes the guy that I think is the foremost expert outside of government on nuclear weapons, Hans Christensen with Federation of American Scientists, Bob Alvarez, who was with Department of Energy under Clinton, and Jim Doyle that John just referred to, a Los Alamos non-proliferation expert who was fired for writing a study arguing for the abolition of nuclear weapons. But I'd like to point out, 4 guys wrote this brief. The brains were supplied by a very talented female lawyer in San Diego. And we expect this case to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. So I hope you all will follow that. You clapped too soon. I haven't told you what it's about. There's a requirement in the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and it was signed in 1970, that all the weapons powers have to enter into serious negotiations leading to nuclear disarmament. So we're approaching it as a contractual matter that needs to be honored, that needs to be fulfilled. Now, I felt it important to give that aside. On with what I'm supposed to be speaking about. And it is largely covered with a fact sheet that John did a lot of the editing on that was included in your packet. So the details are going to be in this, and that gives me license to skip the details and move on to other things. I want to start with what is the essential policy of nuclear weapons policies of the United States. And what you and I and the American taxpayer has been sold on for 70 years now is that it's always about deterrence. It's always about preventing others from attacking us. Guess what? That's not the case. What our actual nuclear posture is one of preserving the ability to strike first and to wage a nuclear war. And my first piece of evidence towards that end, or backing up that supposition, is that's why we have thousands of weapons and some 900 on hair trigger alert. It's not for deterrence sake, it's to wage a nuclear war at a moment's notice. It takes only a few hundred weapons to genuinely maintain deterrence. Now, as John already mentioned, this country is embarking upon spending $1 trillion over 30 years, and I quickly point out that is before the usual cost overruns that are the rule, not the exception. I wouldn't be surprised if we go double that. That tends to be the rule. I'll leave it to your imaginations as to what our country could do with that kind of money. The schools, the highways, the bridges, the homeless, et cetera, et cetera. Now, with respect to the U.S.'s and the other nuclear weapons powers' obligation to disarm, this modernization includes the following. I can only touch on the highlights, but the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy respectively plan to keep brand new heavy bombers for the Air Force and the Navy brand new strategic subs, the so-called boomers, until the 2080s. And this is in writing. So, you know, this is not stuff I pull out of thin air. So much for Obama's rhetoric in April 2009 in Prague about a future world free of nuclear weapons. The reality that's happening is completely the opposite. Now, that stuff is Pentagon stuff concerning Department of Energy stuff, which is the labs. And we're always talking about Los Alamos, but y'all should know in many respects the most important nuclear weapons laboratory is Sandia, which sits right on the airstrips of Albuquerque International Airport. But that runway is also shared with Kirtland Air Force Base. And by the way, if you know where to look, about 1.5 miles south of the runway sit underground an estimated 2,500 intact nuclear weapons, likely to be the largest repository of American weapons anywhere, largest single repository. Now, they're not active, they're not deployed, they're not ready to go, but there they are. Now, the other thing that this modernization money includes is brand new production facilities expected to be operational until 2075. And I grossly simplify, but there's basically 3 types of nuclear weapons programs. Oh, John. There's non-nuclear components. We built a new plant for that. There's uranium components. We're in the process of building one near Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And there's plutonium components, which they're trying to do in Los Alamos. Now, I will defer to John. I'll get right to my closing. There are treaties banning chemical weapons. We made a lot of noise about Syria, you know, just a year ago. There's a treaty banning biological weapons. There's no question that nuclear weapons they're in a class above and beyond themselves in terms of scale, in terms of environmental, you know, catastrophe, and in terms of affecting the gene pool. There's nothing like a nuclear weapon. So how come there's not a treaty banning nuclear weapons? And that's exactly what we got to work towards.
Thank you so much, Jay Coghlan. Introduce Bud Ryan.
I'd like to say thank you to everybody else on the panel for all the work they do. And for a second there, I thought that Jay had invented a time machine so he could just go on and on and on and talk, but apparently he didn't. So I like to refer to Los Alamos as Denial, New Mexico. The reason I call it that is because many of the people who live and work there refuse to acknowledge the higher cancer rates they have because of the work they do. They refuse to acknowledge how badly they've damaged the land up there and the 70-plus years of radioactive pollution they've created that migrates down from their nuclear fortress and into the Rio Grande River, where both Santa Fe and Albuquerque get some of their drinking water. The truth is not very much in evidence. The truth is not very much in evidence there because they will make the claim that the atomic bombs that were created there and were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki won World War II and saved 1 million+ American and Japanese lives. Well, that is simply not true. The Japanese were attempting to surrender through the Soviet Union, and we knew that because we had broken their codes. And the only thing the Japanese really wanted was to keep the emperor safe. Well, when I made the film with Stuart Overby, we have footage of Truman talking about how they wanted to keep the emperor safe so they can could control the Japanese population after the war. So it was always the plan to keep the emperor safe. So we never had to drop those bombs to win that war. So don't let anybody tell you that was the case. In the spring of 1991, I visited Japan for the first time with my wife, Tomoko, and we went to Hiroshima, and it was one of the most profound things I've ever done in my life. I realized how much I'd been lied to by what we'd been taught in history about the bombs we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When you see the suffering that these people went through and the numbers, it's just astounding. So in July of that year, my wife and I moved from New York City to New Mexico. And I remember the first time I went up to Los Alamos and went to the Bradbury Museum, which is just a pure propaganda place. And I felt nauseous after like 5 minutes, because the message that they're putting out there is they have pictures of ruined buildings in Hiroshima, but they will never show any skulls or skeletons or anything else. There's no dead bodies. And they love to put up pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki today. And that message is, well, you know, okay, it's bad that your city was destroyed with an atomic bomb, but look, you can rebuild it. That is a very dangerous message to put out there. You know, it just does not make nuclear weapons seem as scary as they are. And you have to remember, the bombs we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki are like cap pistols compared to what we have today. So, I urge you, all of you here today, to contact your congressperson, contact your senators, and tell them that you want us to finally live up to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And you also need to tell them that they need to support this Iranian deal, the nuclear deal. This is madness if we don't do this deal. So war is going to be better than a negotiated settlement. I can't even understand the logic behind that, or the lack thereof. So you also all need to educate ourselves. We need to be able to talk about these weapons and what's going on with knowledge. And we have to share that knowledge amongst our friends and our circles and the public at large. And you need to join groups like Jay's group, or the Nevada Desert Experience, or find some other local group near you. And you also have to get more deeply into nonviolence, because we cannot tackle this problem from anger. We have to work from a positive point of view to get rid of these weapons. So anyway, thank you all for being here today, but please go and work for getting rid of these horrible weapons.
Thank you, Bud Ryan. Please welcome Marian Naranjo.
Umbiakindi, unsengitiri, navik ema. Good afternoon, my friends. It's an honor to be here with you this afternoon. As an indigenous person from here, I would like to share one of our teachings with you. In our prayers and stories, we always honor the 4 directions. The names and locations of the directions have been passed down in all aspects of our cultural teachings for millennium. From a place in southern Colorado, down through the Jemez Mountains, south to Albuquerque, and east within the Sangre de Cristos, including the lifeblood water source that runs through the center of these points. These are the cardinal, ancestral, to present points of the Tewa world. Within this area, we believe the Creator placed the first peoples here with a plan. The plan was composed of process and mannerisms that formed our lifeways of sustainability through giving thanks for Creator's gifts of land, air, and water. We hold this place in reverence as it is our church, our heaven. Since the beginning, great understanding of how to live in reverence was developed, practiced, lived. A daily spiritual practice was and is performed in honor of this place daily. Time passed, and many changes have occurred. As new groups of people came to these lands, First Peoples were forced to adapt to changes while doing our best to maintain process and mannerisms which sustain the land. We hold the belief that only when we take care of the land, air, and water are they able to take care of us. 70 years ago, the United States government, the Army, and scientists gave themselves permission through the Wars Powers Act to plant themselves within the west wall of our church. These people came on a mission of destruction with no conscious awareness of taking care of the land, air, and water. They entered these lands with no conscious awareness of caring, loving, respecting, and helping those of us whose sacred place they entered. Again, we were forced to change and adapt while trying desperately to maintain the Creator's plan. Through need for survival, we were forced into feeding that energy of destruction and beginning to live in unsacred ways. The door was open for others to enter these sacred lands innocently, but it was a disrespectful manner. Today, I invite you to consciously join me in awareness that we are all gathered together inside of the Tewa world, here at Ogapoge, which is only one of many sacred places given by the Creator to the people. In this country, known as the United States, the government has used its authority to build sites that produce weapons of destruction without permission from the First Nations on or near over 24 different native reservations and places that are sacred to the peoples. These places, which were long maintained in harmony with all that is living, are now covered over by the intentions of pollution of mass destruction. And the weapons that were created on these sacred lands have been used to intentionally destroy people. Here in New Mexico, the first atomic explosion at the Trinity Test, without giving local people any way to protect themselves from the plume of poison which spread across the state and beyond. The second and third bombs were released on our brothers and sisters in Japan, the reason we are gathered for this commemoration. More than 500 above-ground tests have occurred around the world. This knowledge has gone full circle and returns to the Tewa world where it was born. At this time, I would like each and every one of you to join me in making a conscious acknowledgement of where we are gathered and where Los Alamos is located inside of Tewa sacred lands. I invite you to make a conscious decision of which energy of the unseen you wish to feed. The destructive forces of mass destruction or the life-giving forces of the ancestral spirit world. Consciously or unconsciously, each of our mannerisms, our daily way of living, the way we speak, how we walk on this land, what we choose to focus on, are feeding either life-giving energies or the forces of destruction. We all have energy within and around ourselves. And this will only take a couple of seconds, but I'd like you to close your eyes, take a deep breath. I ask you to ground yourself in full awareness of where you are, here in the Tewa world, a sacred area since time immemorial. Take this thought from your mind to your heart and allow yourself to become comfortable with it. As you enter this world, allow yourself to connect with life-sustaining energy that was placed here by the Creator. Give thanks for your life, sustaining energy that was placed here by the Creator. Be happy with the thought of where you are. Be happy with this feeling. Concentrate and feed this positive energy with your presence. Allow yourself to connect with the ancestors. Have no doubt of their presence. Ask for permission to be among them and ask for their help to restore our mother. Grounding yourself in this practice, especially as you walk near or within the west wall of this sacred church, will allow the ancestral spirits to awaken, and they will be fed. Try your best to ignore the presence of the destructive and hold your focus on all that sustains life. In some ways, it's difficult, as we have been trained to focus on that which threatens us rather than that which sustains us. But know that what we focus on increases in strength. We unconsciously feed what we most wish to overcome with our disdain and rhetoric. With every mannerism of our lives, we must feed that which sustains life. During this time in our Pueblo calendar, we are living in deep prayer, preparing for cultural happenings. Instead of leaving our time of prayer to be on this panel, we decided to bring this mannerism to share with you. We invite you to join us in taking action to abolish nuclear weapons using the mannerism of the Tewa people. We are asking you to take part in a specific action, using life-sustaining energies that offer empowerment and an opportunity for us to enter right relationship with each other on this land. The day I was asked to be on this panel, I was given a vision or a dream of this life-sustaining action. I saw our Pueblo governor's offices being flooded with letters of acknowledgement and heartfelt prayers from all of you who stand in solidarity with us for the care of this land. I saw your prayers lifting the spirits of the peoples, helping to take the next step we have to take to abolish weapons of destruction. I saw the giving and receiving of prayers, weaving connection between the worlds, our worlds, allowing all to lay their burdens down and move into a time of great healing. For over 20 years, I, along with other Tewa people, have practiced your mannerism of protest and your methods of working to abolish nuclear weapons. Today, I ask you to join us in this vision of building healing relationships in a manner the Pueblo people are accustomed and comfortable with. I invite you to write to our tribal leaders and acknowledging your presence here with us, letting them know that you are aware that you live or work within boundaries of this sacred place. Acknowledge how blessed you are to be here. Let them know that you too hold gratitude to the Creator for this land and pray for clean land, air, and water. Let them know that you pray for the end of nuclear weapons being produced in this sacred area. Through serving the life-giving energies, real peace will come to the world. Today we have good-spirited people here who support this action and are here to help with letters of prayers. Please join us in this effort, and let's see where it goes. Let's see where it takes us. Kutna waha'a, many blessings to you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Marian Naranjo. Please welcome Beata Tsosie-Pena.
Sangitiri. It's an honor to be here with so many beautiful people working towards such beautiful reasons and life-giving reasons, life-affirming reasons. And I just want to build off what my co Marian said and invite you to, in the lobby, there's a table where you can take a first step of doing your work that I'm sure you all do in your own communities and your travels in a way that's respectful towards the first peoples of this place, of this nation, of this continent. And that's wherever you go, acknowledge where you are, acknowledge the caretakers of that place, whether they're extinct or still living there. Say their names, ask their permission to be there and do the work you're doing there. It's that simple. Take it a step further from that spiritual asking to doing a letter to the people that still remain and show us that you recognize this place, that you recognize that we're still trying to exist here as we've always existed. So those letters will be sent to Honor Pueblo Existence headquarters in Santa Clara, Pueblo, and then from there they will be sent to tribal governor offices. So please, this is a new way of doing things that we hope will help to lift the spirits of the people here and also help to heal generational wounds from our ancestors of things that took place in these lands and that changed the landscape here. And thank you for helping with that. And I just want to read a poem that I wrote for this occasion based on the theme of what Marian was saying of changing what we feed in an energy sense. So umbiak gindi. There is essential remembering when coming into landscapes as timeless as ours, where turquoise prayers mark orange sandstone horizons of earth and sky, nangachukwejo, awe'i makoa, where Hemis plateaus house ancestral spirits places. Kiva Step mountaintops give rise to watersheds, and welcoming cliff houses live eternal. The first solar housing, evergreen energy echoes seasonal winds, like prayers spoken and sung, offerings of life's breath and cornmeal. Given daily for as far back as we can trace generational fingertips etched in petroglyph archives. This is a prayed-in land, and we cannot pray this nuclear waste away, but we can offer ourselves an acknowledgement to the land and peoples violated to bear it. Hope in these blessings that continue to spiral, swirling from boundaries within revered peaks, who once held prehistoric oceans before giving birth to us, whose Tewa names are still spoken, sung, and passed on to children, as they are named with the rising of our Tansero star. Names caressed on golden dawns by elder mothers and aunts. Our mother is our first point of origin. We must realize women and girls are the root of human identity. Ko'o'in, saya'in, jia, kwejovi e po jia. We cannot exist without you. I honor Elder Mountains now. Let these words be prayer. Tseshu pimpie, tsikumu pimpie, oku pimpie, akompie, kutsu ping tampie. There is healing when we acknowledge this endless lineage of caretakers who still reside nestled by once pristine liquid life force, Posonge, Rio Grande, river to us all. Keepers who still carry out their roles knowing inherent truth, knowing what's held in sacred time. Outside of plutonium boundaries and war profit toxicity, drought-induced wildfires from climate uncertainty causing nuclear catastrophe, Creator, cleanse these thoughts. Descendant spirits are whole and this land can be made hallowed once again. Divine Mountain Springs, we acknowledge, we see, we cherish you, and speak intentions out loud that have kept our hearts' tears preserved, ceremonial strength that before only a nation of your children could lift up. Living privileged, we gently walk here, coexist here. We stand listening with open compassion, embraced after giving thanks within this Tewa heaven, centered in cosmic direction, freely sharing teachings of soul reconstruction. Do not feed the pain here. Instead, feed our grandparents' spirits with intentions of asked permission. Imagine their generous voices, Bepoave, offering us a place to sit and eat, Menko. Cultivate relationships with positive intentions, like good thoughts preserving sustained food traditions. Ask forgiveness of our waters and feed them with gratitude unending. Feed this abolishment of weapons by knowing truly where you are. Do not feed, ignore bad manners like the spoiled war machine they are. Nurture our ancestral energies, these prayers, and they will help us reclaim this home. Dikegetnang, carry these prayers until a change of heart's breath no longer allows for disrespect. These collective rains will wash this violent culture backwards as we move forward with mannerisms received from humble beginnings. We come into this place with thankfulness, recognition, adoration for each other and our shared earth, caring for fragile creation housed in air, land, fire, and water, allied with those who still remain, reclaiming love's true domain. We must no longer use anger to feed this war, but instead acknowledge and remember those who endure and who have existed here before. And so, part of the letters that you can sign on to in the hall, there's a centering there that represents all the elements of life that allow us to exist. If you don't have the time to write a prayer from your heart, there's a letter you can sign on to, but we ask that you read it to the water that's there in that centering, and we'll take that water and take it to the places it needs to go, so that it's not just like you can sign your name and feel better about things, but like take that prayer and read it out loud to these elements from this place, and that way it's a true prayer, it's true coming from the heart, and the water is alive and listening, and it will communicate to all the other waters of this place as well. So, kunduaha.
Thank you so much, Beata Tsosie-Pena. Please welcome Jim Lawson again.
Well, thank you, Jay and Ben and Marian and Beata, for your being here and for the wonderful presentations that you've made. I want to especially thank Marian for reminding us that these soils were considered by the ancient people who lived here from at least the anthropologists say 12,000 years ago, counted the earth where they lived as sacred as gift of the Spirit, the Great Spirit, and sought to live here with dignity and honor. And she reminds us that Santa Fe is the oldest city in our country and the only city where some of the ancient cultures on this land are still honored in various ways by the buildings and the rest of it. We modern people tend to think that we're the generation that has been especially blessed in some peculiar ways, but I'm reminded that the earth is the Lord's, that the journey of the human race, in contradiction to some of those Christians who think we are only 4,000 or 5,000 years old, the journey of the race from zoology and biology and anthropologist and paleontologist is very clearly nearly 1 million years old journey. And I'm cognizant of the fact that what the human race has discovered across those that 100,000 years of journeying is still the foundation of where we are and why we are. I am convinced that the narrow forces, what the book of Ephesians in the New Testament calls the principalities and powers, the dark forces in high places, have conjoined over the last 1,000 years especially to ruin the earth and to direct this world in ways that accumulate wealth and greed, but then also dominate and control, but does not allow the creative juice of creation itself to flourish in us and among us. And I'm reminded of the ancient teacher who said that a people, that where there is no vision, a people perish. The bomb, nuclear weapons. Oh, I'm also pleased that Marian has reminded me again that the first bomb built, as I recall, was dropped up here in Los Alamos. Alamogordo. Okay. All right. And that in any case, it was dropped in our own land, and it was dropped on our own people. And that the fallout and all the rest of it continues to be the great hazard for our own land, for our country, for all our people, but for the whole world. In many ways, the development of atomic weapons to me is quite personal. I was had finished my junior year, was actively engaged in summer activities before my senior year at Washington High School in Massillon, Ohio. And August the 6th and August the 9th are indelibly imprinted upon my spirit, because I remember not only they're being dropped in the newspaper headlines and all. At that time, there was no word about the bomb having already been tested in 1943, if I recall, here in this area of New Mexico, because all of that was quite secret. We didn't know anything about a Manhattan Project until the bomb was dropped. The bombs were dropped. But it affected my own life as a student very critically, because I was a debater and speech and drama person in our high school, and the National Forensic League, we were part of that national effort where the debate topic was debated across the country by high school people. And the debate topic, the bombs, the 6th and the 9th, but then in late August or early September, the National Forensic League announced that there was a change of topic for the academic year of 45 and 46, and the topic was changed. I don't remember it exactly, but it went something like this. The new topic: the atomic bomb makes mass armies obsolete. There was no literature available. Nothing. And so, but it did mean that our teams had to really hustle and get engaged in research and study in a new fashion in order to be able to address the question of the bomb. I also remember in that the scientists who invented the bomb told the nation that the radiation was harmless, would not affect anyone. And so based upon that, I recall the stories that began to appear in the press, first of all, of the naval units and the army units that were sent immediately into Hiroshima and Nagasaki to occupy those sections of Japan, also to study the effects and whatnot. Those men were told the radiation will not harm you. But I remember that 10, 20, 30 years especially later, those men and their families were complaining of the cancer, the sterility, the impotence, the mutations on babies that were born here in the United States by people who had been exposed to the radiation in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I remember also how long it took the Veterans Administration, the Army, the Navy, the Congress, the Pentagon, the presidents to study the matter and to say, yes, you were harmed by that radiation in August the 6th and August the 9th, 1945. The deception that has been played upon the American people in this matter of atomic weapons represents the hypocrisy that many of our leaders have practiced across 300 years in yelling and calling and saying we are a free people, while no, certain peoples, women, the slave, the Mexican-American, Pueblo people, were all subjected to tyrannies that in our generation and in the 21st century we must remove. And the only way they can be removed is not through more and greater hostility or sharing blame, but our own generation taking responsibility, and through the magnificent power of creation, what Gandhi called nonviolent power, we mobilize a movement in our land that will help to heal the generational wounds of which Marian has suggested, and will help to heal all of us and allow the sweet breath of equality, liberty, and justice to envelop our nation.